All right. Welcome, Cavell, to the Real Estate Success Podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here for sure.
I know I'm excited for our conversation today and for listeners to get to hear your story. But first, tell us a little about yourself. Who is Cavell?
Well, where do I start? You wanted me to start when I was originally born, came out my mom's womb, stretched and
You tell me. I'm here for the whole life story or just whatever part of your story you want to share.
well, I wouldn't go that far back, but I'm originally from the Caribbean, born and grew in Trinidad and Tobago, to be specific. I came to the United States when I was 17, and that's where, my journey into this entrepreneurial life, really started because on my 18th birthday, I was actually in MEPS. That's where you sign up to join the military.
Mm-hmm.
And from 18 to 22, I was in the U.S. Navy, and that's what brought me to the area. I always say one of the best decisions I made was joining the military, and then the next best was getting out. I did very well, made some really close bonds in there, strong relationship, great brotherhood. But I just felt like I needed that chaos in my life rather than that structure where it's structuring you to go to a very specific place. After that, I went to college, Old Dominion University. After ODU, that's when I got into real estate. My major was minor and I had a focus in marketing. And that really helped me have at least a place to start when it came to trying to build a brand and build a business and things of that nature. I'm fortunate because, with my degree in finance, even though it was a focus in real estate, I'm like the only one with all my college friends that end up in real estate. Everybody ended up in other places in finance. So they all turned to me for real estate advice, which I enjoy, but I can turn to them for other types of advice. So that was that. But since then I've went on to do some things in real estate that I'm sure we'll get into. But I'm married, 5 kids, and that's probably my most important accomplishment. Having a family of that size that allows me to turn off the entrepreneurial switch every day. Like, it's not optional, I always remember when my first kid was about 2 years old, back when I was really heavy in production as far as sales is concerned. I went home at about 5:30. I didn't see her all day, and I just ran upstairs to sit down and write a contract before I came back downstairs to spend time with her. She came upstairs behind me, closed the laptop, put it in the opposite corner of the room, and jumped on my lap. And, at that moment, I was like, man, she really wants my attention. I kind of have to find a way to not bring my work home. And it's at that point where I start to focus on building a team because I realized that to leverage my knowledge and my expertise, I also need to leverage my time so that where I can now still have the same level of production, but without doing every single thing. And then I started to build a team, which started from, one hire, 2 or 3, and then now I'm up to, mid-70s, 75 people that work directly, with me.
Wow.
As my real estate brokerage is concerned. I'm very impactful in the community. I sit on a couple of nonprofit boards. The Up Center, to be specific, 100-year-old nonprofit organization that focus on foster care, mental health awareness, substance abuse, homelessness, all those things. We are serving the community in that space. I really enjoy my time on that board. Also sit on the Minority Business Council Board, which is a liaison to the City of Virginia Beach for bringing, minority businesses, opportunities within, city contracts and just opportunities in general that they typically may not be aware that is out there. We make sure that they know that it's there. And we also fight for the opportunity to make sure that it remains in that space, help people get SWAM certified, and things like that. And then within the industry, I sit on a couple of boards as well. So I'm on the real estate board, which is out in Richmond. So anybody that come into the business that needs to get that final stamp of approval because of their history, they typically come before the board and explain, what caused them to, be in the situation it was and what would make them get better, if they were to get licensed. And also within the industry, people do things that they should not be doing and they need to be held accountable. That board also does that. And then I also sit on the RAIN board as well, which is a RAIN MLS board. So I'm pretty busy.
Yeah.
Family, work, community activities, and I enjoy it because it's all related somehow. So in general, that's who I am. A family man. That's also a businessman. That's also a community person and a person that just like to be impactful with the people around me, and a visionary. I always like to look forward to the future for sure.
Well, and I've told you, I feel like this story every time I've seen you, but my first introduction to Cavell was we were both on the same 40 under 40 class by Inside Business. And so you go to this big gala and they're kind of, highlighting each person one by one. So your name gets called, you go up, they kind of talk about your accolades, everyone sort of claps. It's really nice. And then all of a sudden they call this guy Cavell up and half the room just goes nuts. It was like being in the room of a celebrity, like everybody kind of like, I had my parents and my in-laws and my wife with me, but you had like 10 tables of Cavell's biggest fans. And it was immediately like, man, this guy has a real impact. I knew nothing about you. I just was like, all I know is that guy is someone worth getting to know, surely for the fact that how many people paid to show up and be there and went nuts when you got honored. And your story really stands to explain that. I mean, one, I think it's incredible that you came to America at 17 and 18, decided to serve America in the military, in the Navy.
One of the best decisions ever made.
I mean, just that alone, how many people grow up, their whole life and take America for granted and then don't serve or don't give back in any way. And that was the first thing you did. To then college, to then, and actually let me back up a step. You had mentioned, I got out of the military because of, you wanted the chaos of entrepreneurship. You're like, the military, my understanding of what you were saying is the military, it's a very, linear step by step. This is where you go. This is how your career path will project to XYZ point.
Yeah, it's very predictable, especially for those that are willing to follow the path, right? You do what you need to do, when you're supposed to do it, how you're supposed to do it. You could always predict where you're going to be, And because of that, I was able to see where I would be in that 20-year mark because, after 20 years, you retire. And I was like, I wanted more. And I wasn't willing to wait 20 years to go get it more. So I decided to accelerate it early. And pretty much take that leap.
Which is, the entrepreneur spirit, where the idea of, all right, I'm going to do A plus B plus C all the way for 20 years to get to this place, to an entrepreneur is exhausting. The thought of that feels probably trapping. You're like, well, what about all these other things? What about all these higher peaks that I want to experience, or the freedom, or the, control over where I live and how I live? And so then you jumped into real estate and became quickly successful there. But then, like you said, seeing your kids desire time with their dad, that's one of the things that you spoke to, like, well, then I built a team. But that's what I see when I work with real estate professionals all the time. I've got dear friends who are real estate professionals who are really wrestling with, how do I make the same amount? How do I maintain this level of production and success while being home at night, being home on weekends, you know, not working 60, 80-hour weeks just because I work regular hours during the week plus nights and weekends. So I'm impressed because a lot of people wrestle with that, and I'm sure it was much more difficult than it made sound, but it sounded like you were basically saying, well, and then I just started a team and maintained production. And so for someone who, I have a couple people in my mind, and if they're listening to this, they'll know who they are. What would you say to another agent or realtor who is in that place? Like, I've got young kids. I'm, trying to be more present. It feels like time is the commodity.
So what I would say is, be willing to hire support, right? It's a very daunting idea to wrap your mind around, because in this business, you live on commission,
Mm-hmm.
right? What you kill, you eat.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting paid on the 1st and the 15th or every 2 weeks. So to hire someone and having to pay them every 2 weeks when you're not even getting paid every 2 weeks can be a really big leap.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a game changer for me. And I was encouraged to do it because of one of my mentors. He's like, hey, you need to hire someone to take that administrative stuff off of you. And that way it will allow you to go out and spend more time face to face, belly to belly with your clients. And I did that.
Mm.
And then when I did that, in real estate, you have listings where you could represent the seller, and then you have buyers. As a buyer's agent, you represent the buyer. It's much more challenging from a time-consuming standpoint to have a lot of buyers, because you're out showing property and stuff like that. Then you write number contracts and things of that nature. Versus a listing, you put it on the market and you focus on marketing the property. And you could market it through email blasts. You can market it through print ad. You can market it through, obviously, social media or Google digital marketing, signs in the yards, picking up the phone and calling people. But you can do that all usually from one space. So it's much easier to manage, 10 listings than it is to manage 10 buyers. So my other team building hire was to hire a buyer's agent to handle all my buyers, which allowed me to focus on more listings. And now I can get part of the production by giving business away and giving them piece of the business, and I retain piece of the business. So I had to be willing to not try to keep 100% of all my money, right?
Yeah.
It's like I was buying my freedom back. So in hiring someone to take the paperwork off of me and also hiring a buyer's agent to be out in the field showing property made me give up part of my commissions, but I got way more time to spend with my family. But it also put me in a situation where my hat shifted to the point where I looked at production different. The production wasn't just for me to cover my personal bills and my lifestyle. The production had to rise to the level of where it would make sense for me to do that and also afford these positions. So I had to become more of a smart worker than a hard worker. And that's what allowed me to build a team out, because once you find what works in those situations, then you can rinse and repeat. So I had one admin person. She became really good at mastering certain techniques. I know where her strengths and weaknesses were. Then I realized we were growing because we had more buyer's agents. I could hire another administrative person to take care of all the things that's falling through the crack that she wasn't good at or that she was overwhelmed at. And then I would go now be able to hire more buyer's agents, because now that I have 2 administrative people, I need to keep them busy, and they can't just be busy off of my production. So now I'm thinking about hiring sales agents and building the team out.
Mm-hmm.
So you lead with profit until you're in a situation where you need to expand, and then you make sure you're in a profitable situation again. Then you start. It's almost like pulling levers,
Totally.
rather than just jumping off the cliff. In the beginning, you kind of jump off the cliff, but at least make sure that you have, if not a parachute, maybe a really big, oversized blanket or sheet that you can try to use as a parachute. Don't just jump off with absolutely nothing. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's how I build a team out.
Which makes sense. I appreciate how methodical that is. And I mean, it makes sense in all sales type, production type businesses. The administration is the bottleneck. So almost just starting there, like get that off your plate, free yourself up. Well, now there's more production happening because you're producing more because you're not bogged down. Well, now I can afford someone to kind of be that intermediary. You're not doing administrative. You're working with buyer's agents. You're, helping me manage the production, and I'm passing that off to you, but I'm still retaining some of that. And that's freeing me up to do more listings. And then, I appreciate the beauty of having like a coached, this is a generalized step-by-step. It's going to be the messy middle at times, and it's going to be hard, but you almost need to be A, willing to be uncomfortable, and B, willing to spend money for the fact that, like you said, you have to spend money to make money. You have to be willing to buy your time. You have to be willing to offload the things that are bottlenecking you to someone else.
Man, I'm telling you, being uncomfortable is the right word. And that's why entrepreneurship is not for everyone, but it can be something that people can learn. It's a skill, that comes from repetition and just really not giving up, man. Not quitting, which is easier said than done.
Oh, yeah.
But you just never know where that breakthrough might happen. It might be one extra phone call. It could be, one client that you meet that's starting out just like you as an investor, and, he didn't quit and you didn't quit. And now he started with one house a year. Now he's up to 15, and you was with him from the beginning. So now you're there, and now you learn that. So you can have other people do it. It could be like when I started real estate, I was in my early 20s. And most of my sales, I remember at that time, houses were much cheaper anyway. But my average price, was about $175. And I remember selling at that time, which was good for a new agent, about 12, 13 houses. And my overall sales volume for the year, was like under $2 million. But my units was up there. And my managing broker at the time was like, hey, look at this. We need to have you increase your price range. You sold this many houses, made this much money, and had this much volume. Whereas this person, they sold less than you, but they made more than you because their price range was higher. I'm like, I just got out of college. All my friends are broke.
Who do you expect me to sell these houses to?
She's like, find new friends, I'm like, that sounds really easy. But she was like, yeah, you got to do something because you're working twice as hard and making half as much as your peers here. And at that time, they were selling houses at like, 300,000, 350 and stuff like that. Fast forward now, been in the business 15 years. Not only is the average price range 350, but those folks that I sold those houses to have bought and sold houses over the last 15 years. And they are also making much more money now that they are deep into their careers. Some of them have retired from the military and have a second job plus, Social Security, whatever the case may be. So they got 3 incomes coming in. So when I get a call now from somebody that I knew from back then, the average price of that sale is like $800,000, $900,000, right? For one house. And that's just because I never quit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I kept those relationships as well, too, which is very important. So just about relationships and that tenacity to keep going. And it all just adds up and stacks up over a period of time.
Well, and the realization that, like you said, if you stick it out in any field, or like in any production-based field, real estate specifically, but you're gonna swim upstream. There's like a force of nature of that. The more experience you get, the more referrals you start to get. The clients that you started with 15 years ago, who at that point in time, it was their starter home, they now make twice as much. They now have a bigger family. Innately, you naturally swim upstream, and then you're able to, when newer people come in at those, lower price marks, that's a great thing for a new agent to bring on, is what I'm experiencing from what you're saying. And also, I feel like that's true in my field is, if you're here, my clients started much smaller, but I've grown with them and new ones have come on, and you kind of begin to get more comfortable with those higher dollar values. I heard someone say once that in real estate, they just carry themselves with the mindset that, my biggest deal hasn't come yet. So even if you've sold the, $1 million plus home, it's like you're kind of always on this, like, the biggest fish that I will ever catch is still out there. And I'm just going to keep kind of working and swimming upstream on that because,
I like that. Like
you said, it's like, it's just that next call. You just don't know if you're laying the bricks, if you're doing the steps, where that next call is going to come from and who might be on the other line of it. And so I love that you've carried yourself with that. But now, I'll say and, not but, and now you run Onyx Real Estate, a huge team, a huge brokerage, and lots of agents on it. But inevitably, you and I were talking the other day, some people come, you invest in them, and then they leave. They go somewhere else. Maybe they even come back. You're wearing the hat of managing broker. Like you're wearing the hat of business owner where all these people are looking to you, all these other agents. It's not just you in your tiny little team. You're like, we got a lot going on here now.
Right.
How has it been transitioning to that role, to wearing that hat, to, being a leader to so many in your brokerage and having to walk with them as they succeed and fail or come and go?
Yeah, right. That's a great question because it could be a shocker and not necessarily in a good way when you transition into that type of space, right? But I would say that even though I was shocked by many of the nuances that happens with that managing broker, leader, business owner standpoint, from a broker standpoint, especially some of the things you mentioned where people come in, you invest in them, they leave, they come back, they don't. I'm very, very passionate about agent development. I actually enjoy it, right? And it fuels me in such a way that I enjoy it, and I wake up every morning and want to go do that portion of it because I like to see my people win. And one thing about real estate, people may act like it's not, or not talk about it, but it's a contact sport, and it's very, very, very competitive. And you wear your success, like literally on your sleeve, right?
Yeah.
It could be a badge of honor, or it could be a badge of not so honorable. And the more people I have around me that is wearing that as a badge of honor is really fulfilling. But at the same time, every day is a challenge because there's so many moving parts. So I wake up and I just look forward to figuring out how to inspire the agents, how to train them up in such a way where their skills are sharp, how to bring information to them in a way that they can immediately go execute on it. Because, as you know, there is always a level of, because paralysis by analysis or analysis paralysis type of situation where you analyze so much and then you just don't do anything. Or because the information that you're receiving is so simple, you feel like you could just go do it. And because of that, you don't do it. Because when I'm ready to do it, I'll do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like going to the gym and eating right. It's like, if I want to lose a few pounds, all I got to do is eat right and work out. I'll do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not that easy. You have to have a level of consistency. So how I deal with that is really just by accepting the challenge every day, not complaining, knowing that it's going to be a challenge, but looking for ways to just be very solution-oriented, and going after these challenges. And also having a routine where that routine drives me to make sure that I'm present wherever I'm at. So if I'm in work, I'm working, especially in the mornings. My mornings, I try to win my mornings. Win the morning, win the day. That's why we're doing this podcast right now in the afternoon.
In the afternoon, yeah.
I would never do this in the morning because that's my productive time. You would have to pay me a lot of money to come and do a podcast in the morning time, right? But for me to put it on my calendar, it's not going to happen, right? And then in the afternoon, I'm doing face-to-face. Some days I'm flexible. I'll leave my calendar open. And then in the evenings, I'm with my family. That's where I'm at. I'm blessed to be in a position where I'm no longer out every evening showing property. But I've empowered those that are out doing that to do it in such a high level that they are comfortable doing it and they also have the necessary support. So there is no, I'm not doing it. It's like I didn't take the elevator. I took the steps. There is nothing from a prospecting standpoint to generate business that I ask my agents to do that I have never done in the past or I'm not willing to do. Most people saw me come up using the steps.
Yeah.
So now that I'm behind the scenes, I got a different badge of honor. I don't need the badge of honor in sales because I've sold millions of dollars in real estate year over year. I've helped people, do that. I've built other businesses. So now it's, okay, I wake up today. How can I help other people come up? Because the more people I have under me that's doing what I know they can do at a full potential. Because sometimes you see some people just have it and they don't even see themselves. The more I could bring them up and empower them, the better it is for everybody on the team. Or the more I could just have the folks that was just doing the bare minimum, do just a little bit more. Like for instance, like this year, I know my numbers. Like we in May, I know exactly how many houses we sold last year, right? And I know exactly how many people sold 5 or less houses. I know how many people sold 0 houses, right? And I take pride in production. So in the industry, last year, over 50% of agents did not sell 1 house.
It's wild.
Right? So I think the number is like 48 or 49% of folks sold multiple properties, right? In my company, right, last year, we had 68 agents at the time because it was a tough year. Some people left. And I had 53 or 54, I think it was 53 agents sold houses, right? 15 didn't. And the sweet part is I've always wanted to be in the 80% or more production level. At that number, I think I'm clocking like 81 or 82%, right? So I was very proud of that. And the reason why I was even extra proud of that is because the 15 people that did not sell all had full-time jobs.
Oh, so this was like their side, or they're, you know, phasing into this. Okay.
Exactly. So it's not like they were looking to make money in real estate to pay their bills and didn't. Their bills were being paid somewhere else.
Yep.
So I could say, without any type of doubt, unequivocally, that 100% of my full-time agents, so the agents that was looking to depend on real estate as their source of income, was in production last year. 100%, awesome. Right? So those type of things is what makes it very inspiring and motivating for me to say, hey, let's get this number up. You know what I mean? Let's make it be 100%. So now, if I could get those 15 people that didn't sell a single house last year, even though they're part-time, if I can have conversations with them and hold them accountable, let them know you are a licensed agent, you are paying the dues, you know, and you are trying to do this, at least mentally, stop fighting it and let's get to work. And we don't need to sell 10, but let's sell 1 or 2 this year. Let's just do that. Right?
Now you're rising the tide.
Exactly.
And a rising tide lifts all ships.
There you go. Because now, if those 15 people, if all of them just sell 2 houses this year versus none, that's 30 extra houses that the entire company sold. And now the folks that was just right above them that was maybe selling 5, they're going to be like, oh, I need to sell more because this person barely shows up and they selling. You know, so that alone will cost me to sell maybe another 30. So now we're up to 50 extra houses. And 50 extra houses as a company is a lot.
It's a huge deal. Yeah, totally.
It's a lot. So those are the things that I pay attention to.
It's awesome. Well, I'm curious for you in your journey from, you know, coming to America to, you know, all the way until now, which just feels like a lifespan in and of itself. What surprised you the most about your journey so far?
What surprised me the most, I would say, is how fast and how slow things can happen, right?
Interesting.
I feel as though it's very easy to underestimate, you know, what you can do, you know, like within a week time frame, you know, or a couple of days, or maybe even a month, because you're thinking you have a very short period of time. But with some focus and some intensity and the right support, like you can do a lot, you know, in a week or a month. And then we overestimate, you know, what we can do in like a year time frame because we think we have all this time. But the building blocks kind of need to fall in place on the shorter period of time. So the reason why I say that how slow things take and how fast things take is what surprised me is because when I sold my first house over 15 years ago, my very first house, I told myself that I wanted to become a broker owner and own my own brokerage, right? But I didn't open my brokerage until I was 10 years in, right? But that 10 years of learning and that 10 years of, like I mentioned, taking the steps and, getting my different badges of honor, building the brand personally, within the company and within my sphere of influence, allowed me now to, from my 10th year to my 15th year, to grow exponentially. Like from a company standpoint, I wouldn't expect that I would have opened a company and then have gotten as big as I've gotten, as quick as I've gotten, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like the first 10 years was, like those bamboo trees that the Chinese proverbs talk about all the time, where the roots are just going deep, deep down, and you barely even seeing the trees. Like, is that tree even growing? Yeah, it's growing, but it's growing down. And then once it break ground, within a year, 2 years, it's shot up and past all the other trees, right? So that have really, really surprised me, because we have hit some numbers exponentially from the very first 6 months, then a year, then 2 years, and 3 years. Like the numbers we hit was like we grew really fast.
It's awesome. That's, I mean, again, even in my business, that's just encouraging to hear. Anybody should be encouraged to hear that, it can take a long time as you're building your roots deeper and deeper and gaining the experience. But then once you hit it, it's like a hockey stick. It's just going to like take right off. And then it's amazing to see how fast things happen from there.
Right. And then there's a gift and a curse, right? Because now things are good, things are going, but then you're like, okay, this is a production environment.
Yeah.
How can I do more?
Totally. My second question, sorry, I got distracted because my work phone started buzzing and drives me crazy. That's a podcast for another day. What was the low point for you? Or was there one on your journey?
Yeah, there's always low points. I could sit here and say, no, there wasn't. But I could name a couple. I would say the times where you underestimate the human factor of, folks that are around you, either you might take people for granted subconsciously because you're building your business, and then you get a rude awakening where somebody felt as though, they weren't treated accordingly, and you realize it's always your responsibility as a leader to make sure that folks feel appreciated, right? Or it could be somebody that you felt that you were giving the appreciation to, but, they didn't feel it, and because of that, they had to move on to what they thought would be, a better opportunity, and you thought that you were giving them everything. So the low points is really sitting alone and assessing what led to those situations as an entrepreneur and figuring out how can you do better. You don't want to dwell on it, but how can you do better? Is this something that I can avoid from happening again? Or if it does happen again, how can I, bounce back quicker? Because it's always okay to have a moment. Sometimes it's okay to have a day, but you don't want to be dwelling in sorrow, for weeks. No one cares about, what you're dealing with as a leader. They just care about what you can do for them, So sometimes, those moments can be a bit low because the only one to lift yourself out is you. No one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Some of the low moments as well would be the sacrifices that you have to make, Um, when you're building something special, where it might be less time with friends, partying, hanging out, having a good time because you have to put in the work. And they have 9 to 5s and they could just be off and you're like, yeah, I can't make this.
Mm.
And then happen over and over and over and you just feel like you're missing out. Or it could be, miss time with family, like I always say a lot of times folks in our business or just entrepreneurs in general always say they're trying to find work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that word is tossed around, a bit loosely because in many ways there's really no such thing as work-life balance.
Mm.
It's more so what season you're in.
Mm.
Are you in a season where you have to be locked in and focus on what's in front of you and say no to everything else? Or are you in a season where you could dial back and focus on family because you did sacrifice the last 6 months, type of situation? So when you dialed in and you locked in and you might be in a season where you're making some sacrifices, you kind of in a tunnel, that could be a little bit low.
Mm.
There's nothing really enjoyable per se when you are in the trenches. But when you get out, those are the high moments because you usually get out and you're in a better position than you were before, right? Because you might have built a really good foundation. You might have built a really tall ladder. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You might have built a bridge, but you built something while you were in the trenches, right? And now you
I love that.
you could use that. And lastly, I would say another low point because of that is when you do build these ladders, build these foundations, build these bridges, and then you start crossing them, right? It puts you in a position where sometimes I don't think you necessarily leave people behind, but not everybody want to come with you because they may not want to make the sacrifices you made, or they may not have the vision you made. So now you have to make the conscious decision to utilize the bridge that you built, utilize the ladder that you built, right? Stand on the foundation you built. And if you're there and you're there alone or you're there with one or two people, you can't look back and get too caught up in, that person is no longer, but we all change and just accepting that. So sometimes those moments where relationship dynamic change as you grow as an entrepreneur, those are not good moments. It takes some time to heal, and adjust. So those moments there for sure.
Yeah, it's so real. It's so raw. So this is a podcast about success, but if you just go out on the street and ask someone, what does success mean? Define that word, you're going to get a different answer from each person. So for you, how would you define success?
Success to me is really how many lives am I touching, every day, every week, every month, every year? Like how many people are better off in their lives, either personally or business-wise, because they're in my circle. That's success. Because the more folks that I can touch that can become successful in their version, and it leads to the rewards, either financially or with more time and more space to do things that they want to do, right? I always say, money buy you time, buy you mobility, right? You get to move around, buy you freedom. So it buys more than just tangible things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more I can do that, the more fun I'll have. Because
Mm-hmm.
I like to have fun, but it's not always fun to have fun by yourself. You know, I like to have fun with people around me. You know, like every year, you know, I'm a huge Boston Celtics fan, and every year I go to a playoff game, usually a final game, anytime they make it.
Awesome.
And luckily, the last couple of years they made it. You know, and last couple of years, unbeknownst to me, you know, I started a trend with a couple of my buddies because I was going to go to a game because the Celtics was doing so well. And instead of me just going on my own, call a couple of my buddies up and I was like, hey, you guys want to catch a game? It was like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. I'll get the tickets. Grab the tickets. We went to the game. Then he was like, okay, I'll get the hotel. Another one was like, I'll get the plane. You know what I mean? So without realizing it, the cost was shared amongst everyone, you know, because we were all at that space in our lives where at the spur of the moment, we could leisurely indulge in that activity, right?
Yeah.
And then we had such a good time. The next year, it was like, hey, let's do it again. Let's make this an annual thing. And then we rotated. Somebody else do this because within those things is always fun because one of them is more expensive than the next.
Yeah.
So you get to rotate who is taking up the biggest tab, right? And you do that, keep going. So that showed me that it's important to have people around you that's also successful, you know, because if you want to do something like that and you call, I can't go, man. Not right now, which is the reality of life. That's usually how it goes.
Yep.
Right. So success to me is to be able to, you know, do the things I want to do and say yes to things that I used to say no to, but say yes to them with the people in my life that are important to me.
I love it. Well, Cavell, thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for sharing your time with us and just sharing your wisdom for any other agent to listen and learn from.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. I had a really great time.